Oh man, I thought I could catch skip mid sentence there,
Oh
but
no,
I did not. So yeah,
I'm
today we're
watching.
talking
I'm
about
watching.
the countdown. You gotta get rid of the countdown on Zencaster so that I can just catch skip in the middle of like talking about his latest Netflix binge.
No,
Um, but what we're looking at today is this MSP Persona series, and we kind of got behind on all of our podcasts because we've gone so many conferences. And this week we're at IT Nation Secure. And so, while you're listening to this, if you're at IT Nation Secure, come find us at our booth. Tell us you liked our podcast, whatever. Tell us you didn't like it and thought my voice sounded awful and clippy and Skip sounds nasally and says too much. I don't know.
I got a
Make fun
cold.
of us. But the idea today is we're doing MSP persona. Of last week was CEO. Today it's CISO. So a MSP wears so many hats. Is what hat are you wearing today? And we've kind of been shifting our software to kind of like talk about this a little bit as well. Like, what hat are you wearing now? So you can stay in context, because sometimes we tend to start in a CEO context and then we kind of merge into the CFO and then we kind of fade into the CISO, and we just end up paralyzed because these three personalities are at war within our brain.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it helps when you define what does this role do. And so with a CISO, I wanted to Google it and get the official response of the Googles.
Oh, here we go. Here we
So
go.
from Splunk, which I used to love Splunk. I used to live in that sucker. I did some really cool things with it. A CISO is responsible for the overall security of an organization's information systems. This includes developing and implementing security policies and procedures, perhaps using a security framework as a guide, managing security staff, which means overseeing many security teams in a larger organization. Now, I want you to note something here. A CISO does not have to be credentialed. A CISO
Absolutely.
does not have to be somebody who is doing everything. A CISO is responsible.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can have a
yeah.
janitor
That's the
who's a
bigger challenge.
CISO, but when that security breach happens, he's the one who has to take responsibility and say, who's going to deal with this? And I think as engineers are so used to taking personal responsibility for everything, and then also implementing and actioning off of everything. So when I say you own a firewall, you're like, oh, it's my firewall.
Yeah.
I have to update it. I have to manage it. I have to blah, blah, blah. No, responsibility is whose eyes do I look into when I say, where are we on this? Now, I may delegate the activity to Skip. I may delegate the activity to Richard or Sebastian or anybody else in our team. Will they do it well? I don't know. But it's my responsibility at the end of the day to make sure a good person does that and that a capable person does it. So
Yep.
GWC, get it, want it, has a capacity for it.
That's it. So we do this in our onboarding. We select a champion, and we go through this, and there's a lot of parts and pieces to our platform. It does a variety of things, and we try to set the expectations that no one person is going to ultimately be doing all of this. You get the best value when you have a team effort going on. But we do select a champion, and I use an old Texas term I heard a long time ago, and that's one throat to choke and one back to pat. So that, I think, I like that definition that you're really hitting on there, is the responsible party. And I think some people, at least like me, being more technically driven, they look at the CISO role and go, either, yes, I am qualified, I've got, this long list of certifications, or knowing what they know, they look at that and go, I don't have enough security credentials. I'm not deep enough into that arena. I can't be a CISO. And it, from what we're talking about here, it really is who's going to take responsibility. And by default, if we don't define it, there is going to be a responsible party. Is it going to be your customer's CEO? Is it going to be your account manager? Is it going to be you personally? I mean, however it all shakes out, someone is going to end up being at the focus of this. You can
Whether
either,
they know it or not.
yes. So you can be intentional about this, or you can just kind of roll the dice and hope things work out, which sounds like a
So
really bad idea.
yeah, if you go through your compliance, like we just finished our SOC 2 type 1. And one of the questions, the first questions they ask you is, who is your like chief security officer? Who is the chief compliance officer? You have to designate someone. And that's the whole point. Like, ugh, I don't have one. I'm like, no, you just haven't thought about who it is. There is someone. If you had a security breach today, there is someone who cares very deeply about that. That's your CISO. Whether they like it or not, that is easy. I am the CFO of Virtual C. Whether I like it or not, I desperately want to hire a CFO who can take care of all this for me so I can go over them and ask them, hey, where are we at for forecasting out the next 6 months? I want them to deal with that stress. I want them to come to me and say, we cannot buy this because we cannot invest in this new strategy because, and I say, well, what if I were to come up with this much stuff? And yes, now we can do it. Those are the conversations I need to be able to have. Right now, I have them in my head and with the team. But at the end of the day, it comes down to me. If we don't file our taxes, it's because I did not talk to the CPA. If we don't get our accounting and our books closed, that is on me because I did not ensure that everything got sent over. I don't like being in this role, but it is something that has to be taken care of. And so with the CISO, somebody has to be responsible for taking care of information security at your organization. So who is your client's CISO? Who is your CISO? So you're an MSP, you got an MSP who's in charge of making sure that your MSP itself is taken care of from a security standpoint.
I want to hit on that, Adam.
You walk to your client and say, there's going to be somebody there who, like a CRO, like a risk officer or somebody, or a COO or a compliance officer, that you say, hey, I cannot accept risks on your behalf. So here are the risks we've identified. How do you want to handle these? So who is that person in your organization? They may be a janitor. They may be the chief pencil cleaner. Whatever they are at their organization doesn't matter. But if they've been designated as the CISO, they are the throat to choke or the back to pat if things go well.
Well,
your CISO is often enough is the throat to choke.
Yeah, that unfortunately is it. But your CFO example is really, really great. I mean, if you, a lot of our listeners, small to mid-size MSPs, you may not, and many of you do not have a dedicated chief financial officer. That's a responsibility you have. You may have someone that helps you with your books and do not an accountant type person. But as far as that CFO role, that's something that you do. But I'm pretty sure that's not on your business card. That is not in your email footer, your signature. But you accept that responsibility. You have to think about CISO in the same way. Are you accepting that responsibility? Is that part of it? And maybe you do need to put that on your business card or your email signature. But however you do it, you need to recognize that this is a role that someone has to assume, and it isn't based on technical skills.
And I think you guys also need to realize that these titles, there's a point in which you start seeing roles and responsibilities instead of just titles. And I want to dive into this a little bit because with the CISO, it is super, super important. Because if you say someone is no one, sometime is never. Those are good rules to live by.
That's it.
And so if you're like, oh, someday we need to hire a CISO. No. Stop. You already have a CISO. You just haven't told them yet.
Yep.
Now, if you want to hire a dedicated office of a CISO, you can. But the role exists no matter what. From the day you sign the papers to start a business, a CISO exists, a CFO exists, a CEO exists, a COO exists. All these roles exist as of the day of incorporation. Whether you name them or not, There is somebody responsible for security in your office. And if you say, well, no one is, well, then you have no security, but you're still going to be blamed when something
Yes.
goes wrong.
Yes. The sites are still going to
And
level on someone.
you don't have a CFO. Okay. So, eventually the government's going to come looking because you're not paying your taxes. They're going to be like, well, and it's all going to come down to who signed those papers to incorporate. And that is what you got to deal with now, is that this is a role that already exists. So when you talk about like the CFO role, CRO role, and these different roles, you can't say I'm going to hire one someday. Yes, I want to hire a CFO someday because right now I am the CFO and I'm tired of dealing with it. Right now I am the CISO and I'm tired of dealing with it. And you can keep that role and delegate it. So I've delegated a lot of the responsibilities of our financial systems to another entity, and it frees up a lot of my time. But I'm still stuck in that role until I designate it to somebody else. So when you come to the CFO, what really do you need to be doing, or what already are you doing, or maybe forgetting about? Oh, I'm sorry. When it comes to the CISO,
Okay.
what are you already doing, and what are you forgetting about? Have you decided what kind of framework you're going to hold to? There are a 10 billion of them, and we have people all over the world. So I can't even recommend to you which one to use. Are you in Australia? Are you in the UK? Are you in Canada, North America, South America? Where are you? Depends on what kind of compliance you want to adhere to. You can adhere to ISO. You can do what are you working on right now? CIS.
Yeah, CIS. I think NIST is great, honestly.
This is fantastic.
Yep.
But what are you adhering to? You got to make that decision. Or you say, I'm not going to adhere to anything right now. Okay, that's like taking the mirror and putting a cloth over it and saying, I'm not fat.
There we go.
I am not out of shape and I look fine.
Yeah, round as a shape, it's good.
A compliance framework is one of the chief information security officers' primary role. What mirror are they going to stare into to say, I'm doing a good job? Or here's what I'm measuring myself against. You can make fun of compliance all you want, but at the end of the day, it is a great mirror. And you have to choose something that you're going to adhere to. And that choice, that first choice, is going to help you decide what kinds of initiatives you want to start in your company. If you're doing NIST, you're going to go through all those control families. It's going to ask you 10,000 questions. There's a great workbook out there. It's free. You can use ours. That's in the software. It's just a mirror of what's on this website. It's nothing new. Yep. But you choose your favorite one. Talk to your friends in the industry and find people who also know this compliance. Say, I really like, they CMMC. I like my version of this compliance. I like the Cybersecurity Essentials 8. I like these different things. And then you can bounce off them. Hey, what did you do for control family blah? Well, you can solve it together. That is a great community to be in when your peers are using the same controls that you're using, and you guys can ask each other, how are you doing MFA on these devices? How are you applying encryption to all your desktops? How are you managing this stuff? And I'm having a hard time gathering evidence here. Now you start thinking in terms of, wow, I'm actually doing things. And it's getting busy. Maybe I am in the point where I need to hire somebody to do this. And now you know what to hire. You need somebody who's an expert in NIST. So you're going to look for a officer at your company who is going to help maybe clients apply NIST. Now that you guys have your shop all cleaned up, you're going to start billing for this. And then you have information security officers that are really good at what they do, and you have information security officers that are just kind of like they inherited the hat. Yeah. Maybe that's you. You don't know security. It's not something that interests you. You know it's important. Just as law enforcement is important, but doesn't mean you're out there being a police officer. You like working on firewalls. You like working on servers, and so, but you have the hat. That does not mean you have the breadth of experience to make good decisions. So your compliance is going to help you with some of that. A good CISO who's trained, has been through some breaches, who's been through some bad times, is going to be able to say, "Hey, we could do that, but here's a really great way to make it better." They are seasoned just like you are with firewalls, servers, PCs, and networks. A good CISO should be seasoned, should be grizzled. They should have some failures under their belt.
Yes,
I
yes.
remember years ago going to a CISO conference because I used to be a CISSP director of security, and we talked about the best CISOs are the ones that have been fired,
Yep.
and fired for a breach in particular because they were the throat to choke.
And they've been
And
down that
that
road. Yep.
particular situation teaches a CISO more than anything else, is that massive failure. But because of the public nature of a CISO role, they get fired to increase public awareness or confidence in a company. Like, hey, we got rid of the problem. The CISO wasn't covering us. And then they hire a new one and they go to the CISO and go, sorry about that, buddy. And then the CISO's like, this is the nature of the business.
It is.
There's a couple swear words in there. But the point is, now you have security policies and procedures in place. Are they good ones? Are they well defined? That's a matter of maturity and how good your CISO is.
Yeah. Well,
You can
technically
find
speaking,
what I said. Find the ones that have failed. Find the ones that have been around for a little while that aren't going to look at this as like a sterile world. Find ones that, have been through the trenches. It's like, when you go out there and you find the paper, we used to call them paper MCSEs.
Yep. Yep.
They came right out of college. They got this certification, but they've never actually worked in a Microsoft environment. And you walk in and you're like, this person doesn't know what to do. They know how to run a pristine environment. They don't know how to run the grizzled world, where this is not a Microsoft server. It looks like, what is this? And the CISO's the same way. You want somebody who's been in the real world for a while, who's been in there. And if you can't find somebody who has that real world experience, then find somebody who has got like a CISSP, who's got that broad certification and has maybe some grizzled networking experience where they know that a pristine environment never exists.
Well, let me set the expectations here on the technical element of a CISO, and they aren't as high as you might think. All right. I think sometimes we see that as a pinnacle of a security certification or specialization. And, Adam, you mentioned your security credentials. For much of my technical career, I had this goal of being a kind of a senior security role in an organization. And I felt I needed a lot of really technical skills. And so I built a pretty good set of those. And I got to the point where I thought, hey, I am actually technically qualified to do this security work. And I started to look into those roles and those jobs and what actually came out of it. And I was really disappointed because it was a lot less technical than what I thought. And it's just more about, are you being intentional? Are you following a process? Can you say that you document things or that you have actually done an audit? You may have the resources in place that could do the audit at any time, but have you actually gone in, navigated to the screen and actually clicked the execute button on that and saved the output and put it in a folder somewhere? These are some of the simple elements that a CISO is going to make sure is done, but they're not overly complicated.
And again, it's the eyes to look into. Sometimes the best person in a C-level role has no technical experience because they're really good managing people. And I hate to say that because I grew up in a world where all my managers were non-technical and it drove me bonkers. And largely it was because in that world, there were no senior IT people. You hired somebody who's good at managing people or who wanted to manage people, and you moved him into an IT manager role. It's kind of like you ever watch the IT Crowd. That was my life. I was the basement dweller with the managers who knew nothing, and then they were so confident in themselves, because a good leader is confident, and it's like that's an unrealistic expectation. I mean, I just walked on water. I can't do it every time, it's dry. And like the information security officer has to own the role. They don't have to have experience in security. They should. That's going to help them make better decisions and less mistakes. But a CISO role is somebody that is responsible and knows, like, I need to delegate this. If you've got somebody in CISO role, like, well, they've never fixed a firewall before. Cool. Do you know how much of a CISO role depends on firewall rules?
Yeah, no,
That
very.
is a blip on the radar. It's really nice to know, but they're not the ones hardening the firewalls. In the beginning, as an MSP, you're doing all the roles. So
Yeah,
you're hardening the firewalls. You're doing the zero trust security. You're implementing multi-layers, and you're putting the canaries on the network, and you're doing all that stuff. That's great. You're doing fantastic, but that's not the scope of a CISO. A CISO spends most of their time ensuring that things are done and following up with people like, did you get this firewall in place? Did you harden it? And now they're going to say, okay, I had Skip harden this firewall to the specifications in this compliance control. And everything's been signed off on. Breach happens. Turns out the engineer lied. Skip lied to me.
oops.
I, as the CISO, am going to look down at them and say, you said you got this done. What are we going to do about this? Because your name's on the billboard with me.
That's true.
But in the end of the day, the CISO is the one who's going to get blamed for that firewall admin not doing their job. So you have to have those people skills. How do you determine if somebody, you can't go through and micromanage people. There has to be a sense of trust there. So the CISO has to say, do you have good staff? Can I trust them? If I cannot trust them, the CISO is going to say, we need to get rid of them. They're going to say, hey, you have to trust your employees on follow through. We have to create a culture of trust where somebody fails, they know to ask for help, and it's okay. I have their back. I will help them, because in the end of the day, I care about security. I want things to be done well. I don't want things to be done just out of fear.
Right. Yeah.
I want to make sure my security staff are supported and have the tools and the training and have the environment they need to work in. That's a big part of the CISO role. When you've got all these people under you and they're trying to implement all these controls, you need to make sure that they have a good environment so the engine can keep running. Otherwise, it's all going to come to you, and you're the one who's going to be implementing all the controls, and you don't want that.
Yeah, if it's a mess,
So,
don't try to glaze it over. I mean, don't polish that turd. Fix it, and you can't fix the problems that you don't know about. In
correct.
organization as well, sometimes you need to line those out. You need to weigh the cost. Hey, this is a problem, but our risk is perhaps smaller than this other issue over here. So that allows the organization, kind of the executive team, to make decisions, because most organizations don't have unlimited funds or time. So they can look at that and say, hey, I know we've got a lot of issues here, but this one has the highest impact. This one could affect, our certification. And we would lose tons of business if we didn't have that certification. Or this one could, expose our customers' data, and that would, severely damage our reputation in the industry. Whatever it is, if you're providing the executive team the information they need, they can prioritize that, and ultimately can work through most of those issues. But you've really got to be honest about it. And if you don't have a way to do this, I think, reliably and to some sort of standard, then you're going to fall into this FUD role, where every time you sit down with them, you're just hammering on the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And you're using that to drive things as like with a cattle prod. And that's really not the way you want to work with your clients, because there's a lot of painful things out there. But let's manage those. And so we get out of the FUD role. I think that is a really bad way to manage security, and we can be much more proactive, which is, core to the MSP business model, and do this intelligently by providing some standards, some guidelines, and a plan long term on how you're going to manage these.
Yeah. And I think it's a great way to sum up everything, is that a CISO is somebody responsible for establishing the strategy of your information security. It is not the person who has to implement everything. They are not an implementation specialist. They are responsible. And I think of this series, the personas, the MSP personas, is its responsibility, roles and responsibilities. If you've not gone through a roles and responsibilities matrix, or kind of any exercise like that, Google it, look it up, talk to one of your mentors, and ask them, "Hey, how do I establish roles and responsibilities at my organization?" That is how you determine who you need to hire. But you will have a CISO. Just, are they a good one?
That's it.
You have a CFO. Are they a good one? You will have a CEO. Are they a good one? That's what it comes down to in the end of the day. In this next episode, we're going to talk about CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and what it actually means to be there. It's not an accountant. It's something way more than that, just like a CISO. A CISO is not somebody who can harden firewalls. They are way more than that. They're responsible for culture. They're responsible for compliance and implementation of security and ensuring your posture is solid. Thank you, Skip. This has been a great episode. I'm sure we're having fun at IT Nation right now. It's this comes out on Monday, so we don't have much to do on Monday. We have our
we got
kickoff and everything, and
put up the big
set up,
booth.
Setting up the booth. Swing by and see us with the unicorns, and we have some really cool giveaways. Actually, for our first time ever, we're doing some giveaways at our booth, and they're battery packs, I believe, transparent battery packs that they're pretty freaking cool.
Ridiculous power.
Ridiculous
more
power.
power.
And transparent. What?
More power. More power.
All right. Thank you, Skip. We'll see you next week.
All righty.